All right, everyone, welcome back to DONSLIFE and welcome to the channel. Things have officially escalated when it comes to the possibility of an expanded recall for the 6.2 liter L87 engines. And I'm here to review this information with you. Let's go. Today we have a brand new development in the GM 6.2 liter L87 engine story. And this one comes directly from the NHTSA's website, dated March 10th, 2026. This is a new official document related to the open investigation EA25-007. And what makes this interesting is it's not just the commentary or reporting from media outlets. Remember, we have hundreds of thousands of 6.2 liter L87s in GM and Chevy trucks and SUVs that were not part of the active recall. I happen to own one, my 2021 GMC Sierra AT4 with a 6.2 liter, which just ran out of powertrain warranty. And despite the strong arguments from the owners out there, we feel that they should be part of the recall, but as of today, they currently aren't. But I'm glad you tuned in because big things are happening. This is a formal information request sent from the NHTSA to General Motors. And don't kid yourself, this is significant. So in this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of just summarizing it, we're going to walk through the letter from top to bottom so you can see exactly what the NHTSA is looking for. I'm going to share with you what the language means and why it may be important to the owners of these trucks and SUVs equipped with the 6.2 liter L87 engines. And as always, this is not speculation or wild opinion. This is simply looking at the actual document published by the NHTSA and me just trying to understand what it's telling us. So let's take a look. So section 1, the header. So right at the top we can see the date, March 10th, 2026, and the letter is addressed to Jeffrey Roan at General Motors in Warren, Michigan. The subject line reads, Information Request EA25007. Now, if you've been following this story, that number should look familiar. EA25007 is the engineering analysis investigation that the NHTSA opened into the L87 engine failures. For those who may not know, an engineering analysis, or EA, is typically the final stage of an investigation before the NHTSA decides whether further action may be needed. That could include expanding a recall, requiring additional remedies, or potentially closing the investigation if they determine the issue has been addressed. Somehow I don't see that one happening. So this letter is part of a formal investigation process. So section 2, why the NHTSA sent this letter. The first paragraph explains exactly why this letter exists. The NHTSA writes that the Office of Defects Investigation has opened Engineering Analysis EA25007 to investigate allegations of loss of motive power due to engine failure. Now that phrase is important. Loss of motive power is considered a safety issue because it means a vehicle could suddenly lose the ability to accelerate or maintain speed while driving. We've heard some of the stories out there that people have went through when they've had these engine failures, especially at speed on the highway. And the investigation specifically involves vehicles equipped with a 6.2 liter L87 V8 engine, but here's the key detail. The NHTSA states that these vehicles were not subject to recall 25V274. That means the investigation is looking at vehicles outside of the current recall population. In other words, they are still examining whether some trucks and SUVs that were not recalled may still be experiencing similar failures. Now, if you haven't been following my videos and you're just joining for the first time, remember that we have what people report to the NHTSA, and then we have what GM learns that isn't necessarily shared with the NHTSA or any other outlets. So what the NHTSA knows is only what's told to them. How far or broad these issues are, really only General Motors knows. So section 3, the 225 engine failure reports. So the next paragraph is probably the most important line in this entire document. The NHTSA states that they have received 225 reports of L87 engine failures in vehicles that were not included in the recall. And according to the letter, many of the complaints describe a sudden loss of motive power. This means the NHTSA is seeing reports from owners whose vehicles were not part of the recall, but who were experiencing very similar engine failures to the ones that were part of the recall. Now, this doesn't automatically mean those vehicles have the same root cause, but it does explain why the investigation is expanding. The NHTSA wants to understand whether those failures are unrelated incidents, a different issue, or potentially part of the same defect pattern, which is why they need more information from General Motors, which up until now, they've only been getting information from the general public or people that submit the information to them. So section 4, what vehicles are being investigated? The letter then defines what NHTSA refers to as the subject vehicles. These include GM trucks and SUVs equipped with the 6.2L L87 engine, including vehicles like the Chevrolet Silverado, the GMC Sierra, the Tahoe and Suburban, the Yukon, and the Cadillac Escalade. And importantly, these are vehicles that were not already included in the recall population. So the purpose of this investigation is essentially to answer a key question. Did the recall capture all the affected vehicles, or could the issue extend beyond that group? And this is a very formal letter. Section 5, what the NHTSA is asking GM for. The rest of this document is essentially a series of information requests from the NHTSA to GM. And these requests are very detailed. The NHTSA is asking GM to provide information including engineering analysis related to the L87 engines, manufacturing and production information, warranty claims and field reports. These are things that they didn't have visibility to until they formally requested. Dealer communications, customer complaints, internal investigations, and other documentation related to engine failures, seizure events, and loss of motive power. They are also asking GM to provide information related to manufacturing changes, supplier components, testing procedures, and internal engineering discussions related to the issue. Just listen to some of these words. I'm not going to read them all, but you can kind of see as they scroll on the screen here. Drawings, as-builts, work orders, pleadings, discovery in any form, affidavits, travel reports, annotations, working papers, faxes, mailgrams, telegrams, cables, telex messages, video recordings, backup tapes, information on hard drives, floppy disks, if they exist, backup tapes, zip drives, electronic communications. In other words, the NHTSA wants to see everything GM knows about these failures. Clearly that includes everything they have from internal analysis, engineering evaluations, and production data. This level of detail is typical during the engineering analysis phase, where regulators are trying to understand the root cause and scope of the potential defect. I like that they're taking a very deep investigative approach and they're not just settling for what they're told. It definitely sounds to me that the NHTSA will be deciding where this goes eventually. And near the end of the letter, they really get into the legal authority for this request. I'm going to read you verbatim. This letter is being sent to GM pursuant to 49 USC 30166, which authorizes NHTSA to conduct any investigation that may be necessary to enforce Chapter 301 of Title 49 and to request reports. It constitutes a new request for information. They even go on to mention civil penalties, so GM's failure to respond promptly and fully to this letter could subject GM to civil penalties pursuant blah blah blah, the Vehicle Safety Act, and they have some big dollar figures here. $27,000 per violation per day, with a maximum of $139,356,994 for a related series of delay violations. It goes on to talk about if GM can't respond to any specific request, then they have to provide a reasonable reason for that. And it goes on and on. Feel free to read it. I'll link everything in the video description below. But regardless, GM has to respond to this letter by April 22nd, 2026. So at a minimum, I'm going to be speaking to all of you again around that time period, assuming we get an update. And yes, they can apply for extensions and go through all the red tape, but either way, it's happening. So section 6, why this letter matters. Because it confirms a few things. First, the NHTSA is actively investigating vehicles that are outside of the official safety recall. Second, they have now received 225 official reports from owners that were outside of this existing recall. And third, they are now requesting extensive internal documentation from GM so they can try and understand what's happening. Now, and unfortunately, that doesn't mean there's automatically an expanded recall, but it does show that the investigation is continuing and it's evolving. So for those of you that own a vehicle with the 6.2L L87 engine that isn't part of the active recall, Here's the key takeaway. This document doesn't mean there's any change in the recall process or the remedies. What it does mean is the NHTSA is still actively investigating reports of engine failures, and they are now examining vehicles that were not part of the original recall population, which makes me feel good because mine just ran out of powertrain warranty, and I'm a little bit nervous just owning that vehicle. So essentially, this is part of the process of determining whether the current recall addressed the issue or if additional action may be needed. As always, I'll continue to monitor the NHTSA's website and any bulletins or documents that they publish, and I'll be sure to inform you. You know, if something significant changes, I will take the time to report on it. If you found this breakdown helpful, please let me know in the comment section. Leaving your comments really helps others get recommended the video. Of course, you have to hit that like button. Please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.